The following review is on a game rated M for mature. When word got out that the Metal Gear franchise would be introducing a hack-and-slash game to the roster by the name of Metal Gear Rising: Revengeance, the reactions from the fans of the franchise were mixed, but a bit unfavored. Many of them stated that the game was an unwanted, noisy addition to an otherwise stealth-focused, story-based experience. Others said the name was dumb. While it's true that certain titles have made nasty mistakes to their additions, I've never been bothered with known titles stepping outside of their source in places as long as the game itself is engaging or fun. They were right about the name though, it is pretty dumb. I too started off with my own negative predisposition toward the upcoming title, like the fact that Raiden won't go away already.
Let's get this over with.
But I became psyched for the game the moment I saw that Platinum Games, makers of Bayonetta, were the developers behind this one. And if it's anyone who knows how to make exciting, over-the-top hack-and-slash action, it's Platinum Games. So, is Metal Gear Rising retarded the exciting, over-the-top hack-and-slash I expected it to be? Or does it be-do-do-be-do? Let's find out. If you've played a Metal Gear game before, then you know what the story's about. They want America to start a war because war makes money, so they'll try to achieve this goal through heinous means, and it's up to Raiden to stop them.
Oh, you're saying, give war a chance!
As you can probably imagine, it's a hammy story and a whole world of ham, as you've come to expect by now. As said before, you play as Raiden, a key member of a private military company and a character of whom I never liked from the previous Metal Gear Solid titles. Fans of the franchise may remember him as the main character who first made his very rude and sudden appearance in Metal Gear Solid 2, a game sporting a much more awesome character everyone loves on the box art, trailers, and game demos.
This is Snake.
Nope.
Raiden, however, goes about the game being whiny all throughout, complaining and delivering cringeworthy lines,
The party's over for you.
looking like an ass around the other characters,
Did I tell you you could move? It's all right. He's not one of the bad guys. Don't go pointing that thing everywhere, kid.
and bringing about segments of awful, forced backstory exposition between him and his girlfriend over the codec.
I said it was probably the Chrysler building, and then you showed up and started mouthing off. You were like,
One character twist later, brought to you by 2 days worth of cutscenes, he makes the transition from bitch to Edward with a sword by the time Metal Gear Solid 4 came around. Even as a cyborg ninja capable of ridiculous feats, he still couldn't bring himself to stop brooding throughout the whole game. Now we've come to his role in Metal Gear Rising. Does he make a comeback?
You're just another maggot crawling in the pile.
Sort of. At least he's got some spunk now, even if he does deliver some groaners still. Honestly, he has a lot to come back from, but he's trying. Give him time, he's got a lot to come back from. So the story isn't a whole lot to write home about in terms of complexity or anything, and while the goals within the story change in ways that feel a bit disjointed, it's still surprisingly easy enough to follow. Not only that, the cutscenes aren't ridiculously long as they have been in the past, ensuring you won't be out of the action for an extended period of time. You can, however, take part in several optional codec dialogues with supporting characters, which, from what I hear, can add up to about 4 hours of extra flavor to the story along the way. It's a real nice touch, and I'm actually planning on playing the game over again to take part in some more of these that I didn't before. But enough about the story, I got a little ranty there. When Platinum Games took the helm later in development, they edited the hell out of the story and made it more open to allow gameplay much more strength and variation. With that said, it's time to get into the actual game where things truly get interesting. Metal Gear Rising Redonkulous feels about as awesome as it looks, running at a solid 60 frames per second, barely ever falling below that, regardless of how much action is on the screen. The graphics and environments are quite nice as well, and coupled with that aforementioned frame rate, it's pretty impressive how Platinum managed to achieve this on 7-year-old console hardware. The combat system is fast and visceral, much like that of recent Ninja Gaiden titles, and the controls are pretty responsive for the most part. Most battle encounters call for you to be aware of your surroundings more than most hack-and-slash titles, as you're not actually given the typical block and dodge buttons as you would come to expect. Raiden's fighting style since Metal Gear Solid 4 has always been very aggressive, stylish, and a bit careless, which is conveyed in how he controls. In order to defend against most attacks, you're given a parry system, which is executed by flicking the left thumbstick in the direction of the incoming telegraphed attack and pressing the light attack button simultaneously. If executed late, the attack is simply blocked, but if executed with precise timing, Raiden attacks immediately after deflection, leaving his enemy wide open to return fire. This of course means you can't hold this stance for multiple incoming attacks. If an enemy attacks repeatedly, you have to execute a parry for every swing coming at you, which takes significantly more timing and skill if you want to avoid the most damage. If the enemy's telegraphed attack is of a bright yellow coloration, it can't be parried, and you must then count on an unlockable dodge move by pressing in the desired direction, hitting light attack, and jump simultaneously. These defensive moves, while they work for the most part and are satisfying to pull off, they're not without faults. The parry ability, as you would imagine, has the issue of sometimes just plain attacking instead, leaving you open to an incoming attack if you don't flick the stick in the precise direction. Normally you can blame the player for being dumb and not hitting the right direction to begin with, but sometimes it's actually the fault of a very fussy camera system. You can control it for the most part with the right thumbstick, but there are times the game yanks it to a different direction mid-battle, screwing up a parry for you. I have to say, out of all the enemies that want you dead, there are times it feels like the camera itself is plotting your demise as well, and it's easily the most frustrating aspect of the game. The dodge move works, and even has a few invincibility frames when timed right, but using it to quickly resituate yourself mid-battle is not recommended. Reason being is, the dodge move only works in 3 directions, left, right, and back. So those who would like to gain an advantage out of dodging in a free plane, well, you get to eat shit. When it comes to gaining your health back, this is done in 3 ways. The first is the obvious nano repair unit pickups that restore portions of your health upon walking over them. Another is finding repair nanopaste items, which can be kept in your inventory and used via the item menu, or it's used automatically once your health reaches 0. The third and most beneficial way is to take advantage of Raiden's Blade Mode, which introduces a cool new physics system set in place that makes the environment and your enemies with light or weakened armor fall apart depending on the direction of your slashes. Raiden's sword is quite a bit of fun to use, and can cut through a very large number of enemies and environmental set pieces just for the hell of it, or to reveal secret paths, items, and unlockables. It just can't cut through cats. By using this blade mode system on exposed enemies and slashing in just the right spot indicated by a reticle, as long as you don't leave blade mode the moment the target is slashed, you can press the action button to yank out their exposed electrolyte fluids, which fully restore not only your health but your blade mode gauge as well. The opportunity to maintain your health, in my opinion, is so often that it does tend to take away from quite a bit of the potential challenge to the fights. Of course, encounters don't always have to be brute force to complete them. Many encounters you can sneak around and pick enemies off one by one, which in later levels of the game is a pretty good idea, as enemy forces become quite a bit to handle when they attack you all at once with bigger enemies. When an encounter is over, you're graded on your performance depending on how much time it took to complete a fight, combos performed, electrolytes absorbed, and so forth, which grants you battle points. There are a number of other ways to obtain these battle points, which are used to upgrade Raiden's health, blade mode gauge, weapon stats, and even purchase new moves, of which there are quite a lot of. As it is with any good hack and slash game, there are boss battles to tackle as you progress, and let me tell you, these are real defining factors of the game. Each battle features a tougher bastard each time with unique strategies on defeating them. They're a hell of a spectacle to fight, they've got awesome music to go with them, And for once in a long time, they're actually a challenge, which isn't something you come by in games these days. I personally couldn't wait to fight these bosses just to see what kind of crazy crap they would throw at me next. Each time a boss is defeated, you gain their weapon to be used as a secondary weapon, which can be selected and bound to your strong attack button. It's a cool system, but the problem with it is there isn't a way to swap these weapons around without holding still first, going into the items menu, and then switching around. It's a real flow breaker, and while certain sub-weapons or your sword's strong attacks serve many situational purposes, the fact that you have to go into a menu every time to swap around becomes discouraging to the point where you'll probably just pick your favorite method and just stick with it. I did mention that the many opportunities to restore your health got in the way of the challenge a bit, but regardless, the difficulty curve is actually pretty steady and does get more challenging up to the end. I won't spoil the final boss for you, but I will say that while the final boss doesn't have a whole lot of build-up to the character, this one makes quite an impression regardless, and is one that you can't help but enjoy at work. Not only that, it's a very engaging struggle, and the actual fight itself is a true test of what you've learned from beginning to end. A final exam, if you will, just as a final boss should be. Completing the game doesn't take a very long time if you play it bare bones. On my first playthrough, I watched all the cutscenes, but I didn't take part in all the optional codec conversations. By the end, with very few restarts outside of the final boss whooping my ass, I was able to complete the game in 5 to 6 hours. However, there is a New Game Plus mode, allowing you to play the game over again on any difficulty with all of your upgrades and battle point purchases intact. This is a great way not only to find all of the secret unlockables, items, and battles that you missed, but it's also a chance to improve your scorecard grades if you're into that sort of thing. Well, I believe that covers everything, so here's the breakdown. Coming up with an opinion on the story was a bit of a tough call for me. I might have sounded harsh on the story earlier, and while it isn't a great one and feels a bit rushed at times, it's still fun. It's campy. Regardless of how much I complained about Raiden as well, he was never a bad character in this game, so he doesn't really get in the way too much. If you've never played the Metal Gear Solid games before, you might even have a chance to have an unbiased opinion toward him, and even grow to like him. In closing, I didn't take interest in this game because it was a Metal Gear title. I played it because it looked like a fun video game, and that's exactly what Platinum delivered in spades. If the jaded diehards of the Metal Gear franchise want to keep dismissing it as an entry to a downward spiral of the franchise, they're welcome to it, but it stands as an enjoyable title all on its own, and they'd be missing out. You don't even have to be a fan of Metal Gear Solid to enjoy this game. Sure, there are some references here and there, but since this game doesn't pick up where a previous story left off, prior knowledge isn't required. In the end, I wholeheartedly recommend this game to anyone looking for a visceral hack-and-slash experience on the level of Bayonetta, which brings my final score for Metal Gear Solid Rising: Revengeance to an 8.5 out of 10.